YouTube's the second largest search engine in the world. It's actually less about subscribers and more about views because, you're buying the history of the channel. And your assumption is that the history is a good indication of the future, i.e. lots of views in the past should mean lots of views in the future.
Today on the show, I'm happy to have Blake Hutchison. He's the CEO of Flippa, one of the largest online marketplaces to buy and sell digital assets, businesses, e-commerce companies. So Blake, what is the total transaction value processed through the platform at this point?
Yeah, we've done over $1 billion in trade, but we typically do around $200 million in trade each year.
Wow. And then this business, I know that some capital was raised for this. So what did it take to get it to this level?
Yeah, so when I took over the business 6 years ago, it was a bootstrapped business. The founders had done a great job building out a platform, assembling an engineering team, and scaling it to a place where it had an established community, albeit trading low value assets. What we had to do was professionalize the platform, add a layer of customer centricity to it, build a marketplace integrity feature, start to add in some sales function and start to scale it from there. So we really took what was a bootstrap business, and it was almost a turnaround because it had been declining for a 12 to 24 month period of time before I took it over. At that point in time, we really focused the organization and the people within the organization around where we were going. Where we were going was democratizing the exit, providing a pathway to exit for all entrepreneurs around the world, regardless of online business type or size. And that meant hiring someone who was customer centric. And that was really the biggest change. And then from there, we raised some high net worth money, call it angel money. And then we moved into a Series A.
You came and you took over 6.5 years ago to really take this to the next level. When was the business actually founded?
2009. So it's 15 years old.
And then how many employees are currently in the organization?
75.
75. Very cool. So what were some of the big changes that you made? You said the sales function was a big part of it. What really took this business to the next level?
So the big thing is marketplaces are built on trust, and Flippa had a trust issue. That's no longer the case. So we put a large amount of focus and effort around marketplace integrity. Now, the reality is what that means is that we had to figure out how to vet the assets and assure that the buyers were acquisition fit buyers. So there was a lot of effort into building data integrations. So we have 15 different data integrations now. So Shopify, QuickBooks Online, Xero, Google AdSense, YouTube, AdMob, the rest. And those go a long way to ensuring that the data that you're looking at about any given business is, of course, accurate and always up to date. The second thing we had to do was build a buyer onboarding in such a way that we could validate the buyers. And once you've got those sort of key tenets in place, it tends to be that the two parties trust each other a little. The next step was really to professionalize the onboarding experience in such a way that you could extrapolate from a seller what you needed to extrapolate from a seller to ensure that the buyer saw what they wanted to see. The next piece was matching. It's one thing to have buyers, it's another thing to have sellers, but good marketplace will thrive on marketplace velocity. And so you need to push buyers into the selling community faster and faster and more efficiently. So we built just a rudimentary matching engine. And then February 23, we built our first AI matching engine. Then we added the sales function, and we were bootstrapped, an engineering-led business run out of Australia. So we built our first sales function in Austin, Texas, and we started to go to the community, introduce ourselves to the community, give them a sense of what the platform can achieve for them. That's really the combination of those things was really the substantial change that we saw in the business from a growth standpoint.
Now, you mentioned velocity being key, as well as the integrations for all the trust building, right? To make sure the transactions are seamless. Wow. What do you see, what is a good indicator of a strong velocity on your platform? What's the average time something should be up before a purchase is made?
Yeah, so we start at the beginning of the funnel, and that's really the matching. So how many buyers are interested? So you've got to drive that. The next step is to build some sentiment analysis to understand whether they're genuinely interested. Now, once you've got a feel for who's genuinely interested, you're trying to move towards an LOI. So that's a letter of intent. And that's something that can be issued on the platform. Of course, you start to know that you've got some velocity when you get lots of LOIs and you get lots of countersigned LOIs. That suggests that the matchmaking has occurred, and that suggests that the seller and the buyer have come to terms. At that point in time, they'll move through due diligence and ultimately through a payment transfer including the asset transfer. All in, that very much does depend on the size of the asset. So Flippa does 4, 5, 6, and 7-figure assets. Now, a 7-figure asset is going to take 6 months to sell it for obvious reasons. There's very few people in the world who have 7 figures at their disposal. Where they do have 7 figures at their disposal, it's a risky investment choice, and accordingly, they'll go through the appropriate due diligence process. Then you've got the transfer of assets, and that often comes with some legality attached to it. Whereas a 5-figure asset will trade in 30 days.
And what do you see as like the average asset value, that the most common value that's being transacted on your platform?
Oh, $250,000 to 500,000. So 250 to 500,000 is the most commonly traded asset type or asset size.
And is that generally just somebody buying their first business, or is it like rolling up a series of sectors and industry?
Yeah, a little bit of both, Chad. You have acquisition entrepreneurs, you have family offices, institutional strategics. They're all playing out on the platform. So they all have different intentions. An acquisition entrepreneur will tend to be buying their first business. You do get some high net worths who are rolling up assets and then they use their strategic capability or their execution capability. But generally speaking, for a $250,000 to $500,000 asset, that's an individual, and that individual is buying to operate.
And have you seen that there's a particular industry, or do you see trends in industries where a certain year it's all about the healthcare sector and then it moves to the next?
Yeah, we have great buyer intent data. So we're like a search engine ourselves. We see 600,000 monthly searches, and from there we get a feel for where buyers want to go. And it's actually a great thing for us because it enables us to stock the marketplace where there's inventory gaps. So at the moment, for instance, as you could expect, Chad, 24 months ago, we didn't really see a great deal of search volume for the AI type of asset, right? Now, of course, AI is flying. And so we're seeing a great deal of intent from the buying universe. And as a function of that, we launched an AI category and we've started to add AI related assets, either built all in AI or AI powered to the Flippa marketplace. Right now, it still is the fact that there are more e-commerce businesses than other digital assets. And so e-commerce is still the number one asset type sold on Flippa, but we do have some fast growing asset types. YouTube is a really fast growing asset type. So YouTube channels are traded. We do 10 to 15 YouTube channels a week at the moment. And then the second one to mention is KDP, that's Amazon Kindle Publishing. And obviously in that case, you're buying the back catalog. So you're buying a sort of list of novels that are digital in nature. People will buy those as businesses and they'll trade those as digital assets because they're predominantly passive.
It's interesting that YouTube channels are now becoming a popular category for you. So
It's just
is it like business?
on a media asset, right?
Is it like businesses looking and saying, this is a potential brand asset for me and another marketing channel, and that's why they acquire an asset like that?
Both. It's either. So remember, as you and I probably both know, but for the audience out there, YouTube's the second largest search engine in the world. And so what that means is that it is a media asset. And so if you like media assets, you could just roll up 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 media assets in different verticals and then use various ad tools, be it the AdSense product or sell into your own sponsors across that network of assets. The flip side of that is that's more a financial play, whereas the strategic play where, yes, to your point, someone, is operating a business in the health or wellness sector and they'll go and buy a health and wellness related YouTube channel.
And is there a certain size of YouTube for those who listen to our episodes who have YouTube channels? Is a certain size of account for them to be viable to now sell it? Do they need 200,000 subscribers? Is it 10,000?
So amazingly, it's actually less about subscribers and more about views because you're buying the history of the channel, and your assumption is that the history is a good indication of the future, i.e. lots of views in the past should mean lots of views in the future. Look, the reality is, Chad, we sell small and we sell big. So the biggest YouTube channel that we've done so far is still relatively small in the context of Flippa generally, but we've done $1 million YouTube channel, but we sell $15,000 up to $100,000 YouTube channels a couple of times a week or up to 15 times a week. I guess the average would probably be quite low at the moment. I'd say it's going to be $25,000 to $50,000 average, but we will trade them up to, we've got $5 million channels listed at the moment, but the biggest we sold was $1 million, as I mentioned. And so it really just comes down to views. I think the average trading multiple right now is probably about 3.5 to 4 times because it's still a nascent asset class. is actually there's a lot of power buyers in this space right now, but there's still, as a sum total, there's fewer buyers than other asset types.
And I know you guys, a lot of the assets on here are very technology focused company. Do you still see like the boring physical businesses like a laundromat or a dental office being listed on your platform?
Not at all. So Flippa is the number one platform globally to trade online businesses. And that's a critical piece of our focus. We do digital exclusively.
What do you see coming next over the future of Flippa? How are you guys scaling to the next level?
I think there's a couple of things. We've recognized there's a number of different asset types that people would like to sell and then ways of selling. So for instance, as I mentioned, we launched YouTube, we launched KDP. You can imagine another few categories come our way. Chrome extensions, Slack plugins, that type of category extension for us is going to be really important. The second thing is the way people want to sell. So at the moment, we've recognized there's a large number of people, a large number of small business owners who would love to sell a partial stake of their business. And that enables buyers to then not be operators, but be investors in these good quality small businesses. Instead of investing in a moonshot and hoping for the best, you can back a good quality small business, digital orientation that is growing well, but is clearly not targeting a unicorn type valuation. So we think the partial sales will become a big part of our marketplace in the future. In addition to that, it's really just about making sure that the marketplace operates in the way that both sellers and buyers expect of us. For example, today, Chad, we launched Flippa University, and Flippa University helps buyers get acquisition ready so that they understand the process to go through. And it also helps sellers to understand how to get seller fit, which essentially means ensuring that their business is in the shape it needs to be to get an exit done. So above and beyond sort of category expansion and product extension, it's really about making sure that the marketplace is efficient by way of either technology or education.
If I wanted to list my Spotify for my Failing to Success podcast and just sell a percentage, this is a potential thing I could do in the future here.
100%. Podcasts are a category on Flippa. We actually see very few of them sell right now, and that's just because it's a very nascent space for exits. But the reality is, Chad, I think that's the right play long term. You don't want to run this thing forever, and you want some liquidity. And if it's got value, people will buy it.
Definitely. No, that's the whole point of building assets, is that someday you should be able to sell them.
Completely agree with that.
So Blake, if any of our listeners wanted to buy a business, sell a business, buy an asset, sell an asset, how could they learn more?
Yeah, best thing to do is head to the Flippa blog and consume some of the stories. We've got our own Humans of Flippa podcast, which talks about the people who have built businesses and exited them on the platforms. You can learn a lot from that. Check out flippa.com as a free valuation. If anyone wants to get in contact with me directly, I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me at Blake Hutchison.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Blake, for coming on. Everybody make sure to check out Flippa. I have browsed the site many times over the years. When building up my businesses, it's a great product. Blake, thank you for coming on, and thank you everybody for listening to another episode of Failing to Success. If you like the show, make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.